Let's move on to our next guest, who we are honored to have back on the show, and that is Lee Camp, who, by the way, has a great new comedy news show, Unredacted Tonight, that is out. It's actually coming on a little bit later today, so great to have you here in advance. Lee, thanks so much for being back with us.
Thanks a lot for having me, Eugene, Rania. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to see you. And your last guest was spitting fire. Don't put me on after that. That was too good. That was. I want someone with a lot of ums and ahs right before I go on.
All right. Take Lee off. Let's get a crap guest in so that he feels better.
Thank you.
Listen, we did set you up. I can't lie. We did set you up. But nonetheless, very happy to have you with us here. And I want to talk about the show in just a bit as well. But before we get into that, you've been making some excellent points that I'm hoping you could talk a little bit about is the context of this crackdown that we are seeing on dissent, on free speech, on Palestinian solidarity is all happening under the umbrella of anti-Semitism. We're doing everything possible to protect Jewish people and to fight against anti-Semitism, which of course is a pernicious form of racism. I guess I just wonder how that strikes you, because it really is, to me, one of the most kind of insidious aspects of how the Trump administration is selling this.
Yeah, it's breathtakingly revolting, of course, to see any criticism of Israel, any criticism of genocide called anti-Semitism. But also, as a Jew, and I know I have one of those names where people go, wait, Camp can't be Jew, but yes, I am a Jew. But as a Jew, it destroys the actual concept of anti-Semitism. There is real anti-Semitism in the world. And when you, and you meaning Israel and everyone who's going along with this, but when you take that term and use it to apply to anyone who stands up against this genocide, stands up against Israel, stands up against ethnic cleansing, stands up against apartheid state, stands up against all these things, all these horrific things, if you say, oh, that's anti-Semitism, well, now the word essentially has no meaning. You've utterly destroyed what that word means, how it's used, when it could actually be used to criticize something, say that person is anti-Semitic. It has very little meaning, thanks to Israel, and thanks to how hard, here's the other part of it, how hard Israel has worked with the propaganda to make people think that anything anti-Israel is thereby anti-Jewish, and also that Israel speaks for all Jews. Both those things are utterly ridiculous, but they've worked very hard to get people to believe that. And so now you have people going, oh, well, anything Israel does is supported by all Jews around the world. And that is utterly ridiculous as well. There are millions upon millions of anti-Zionist Jews like myself. There are more Zionist Christians in just America than there are Jews in the world. So the numbers don't add up at all in that regard. But Israel has worked very hard to put us in this position where anti-Semitism, the term, is becoming meaningless because they want to crush any criticism of that country.
And speaking of this settler colony called Israel, Lee, there was this anti-Semitism conference that they had like last week. And it was a huge embarrassment because of the fact that there was all these far-right figures there, including Nazis, which is quite embarrassing. But it speaks to the moment we're in, right, where Nazis have wrapped themselves in the flag of fighting anti-Semitism. They literally are being Nazis under the cover of protecting Jews. Like, you can't make that up. Like, you know what it's like, it's like the irony in that is so insane. But that's what you have today. You have the sort of like offspring, ideological offspring of the perpetrators of the Holocaust, because we have actual modern day Nazis, neo-Nazis, and they are attacking, well, they're supporting a genocide against Palestinians, attacking Arabs in the West, brown people in the West, justifying like deporting people in the most heinous ways, justifying abducting them off the streets and putting them into these ICE torture facilities, all in the name of protecting Jews. So could you just speak to the fact that that's just the most insane thing ever?
Yeah, the alliance between Israel and Nazis or neo-Nazis is truly horrific, and it shows how inside out everything has become and how Israel does not speak for Jews. I think it really is a glaring example of that. You talked about how Nazis are, wrapping themselves around this cause. Well, the reverse is true as well. Israel is giving giant bear hugs to Nazis, and they're groups like the Anti-Defamation League, which is, supposedly supposed to search for hate and anti-Semitism, but of course they're just there to support Israel. You've got them defending, Elon Musk doing a Sig Heil on stage. They're defending literal Nazi salutes and Nazi emblems. Meanwhile, they spin around and say any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism. It is all completely inside out. It's inside out morally. And I think everyone should be outraged. You should be furious, or you're not paying attention. The great expression, it is no sign of health to be well adapted to a profoundly sick society. So if you're feeling good right now, that things are going all right, then you are very well adapted to a profoundly sick society.
I couldn't put it better myself. And it brings me to another point here, too, that I think is maybe has been clarified for people. But, given the campaign last year, the presidential campaign, and, Trump's attempts to, I think, manipulate people who do want to see a pullback in U.S. imperial wars abroad. They want to see an end to this military-industrial complex, that he was some sort of peace and anti-war candidate that was going to, be the dove of flying around the world. It feels totally exposed now, Lee, and it feels that anyone still trying to truck with that is just lost the plot.
Yeah, they're trying to take a few examples of where Trump is less belligerent than the Biden administration, such as the proxy war in Ukraine or his initial momentary attempt to end the never-ending war with North Korea. They want to take examples like that and say, oh, he's a peace president. This is the guy who his Pentagon dropped 44,000 bombs his first year in office. Obama's final year in office, they dropped 26,000 bombs. These are two pro-war parties, pro-destruction parties, pro-genocide, really, parties. And there are some examples where Trump is less belligerent than the Biden administration. That does not mean he's anti-war. It does not mean he's going to stop all wars. He's going to stop the genocide in Gaza. He's going to stop genocide in Yemen. No, he is equally war-minded, bloodthirsty. It's just he has slightly different views on things here or there. But anybody who's calling him anti-war, they're just completely laughing at the facts, laughing at what we saw during his first 4 terms. I mean, when he assassinated Iran's top general, it could have sunk us all into nuclear war or some kind of horrific war. So, he has put us on the brink of Armageddon as much as the Biden administration has, but maybe in slightly different. It's a slightly different flavor of bloodthirsty maniac.
I would also want to ask you, Lee, in the context of all this censorship and repression people are facing, you are someone who's faced your fair share of censorship as a journalist. What advice do you have for activists, comedians, journalists who are speaking out right now? And how do you think we should be pushing back against this kind of like manufactured moral panic while staying rooted in very important solidarity with Palestinian liberation?
I think it was Bruce Lee said, you got to be like water. You got to move.
I didn't see that one coming.
Around all the obstacles, you just create all the platforms and go to the ones that are working. I've been banned from my old channel, banned from YouTube, banned from Spotify, banned from TikTok. And you just got to keep finding those outlets, keep moving, in many ways to stop this genocide or in many of the other anti-war efforts. We're going up against one of the most powerful forces humanity has ever seen, which is the U.S. Inverted totalitarian system. And so no one should think it's going to be easy. No one should think it's going to be quick. This is a long-term fight. We're in a marathon to try and bring peace and some sort of moral understanding back to this world. And you just have to keep trying different tactics, different things. I was very active in Occupy, but that doesn't mean that's the tactic to use from forevermore. Occupy worked. It was a tool, and it worked for a few months. And sure enough, the ruling elite found ways to crush that. So you got to find new tools. You got to always be changing, always shape-shifting, as it were.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of, former intelligence officials, maybe some current ones that thought they could shut you up. And, they are unfortunately going to have to be drinking their own tears. Redacted Tonight was such an amazing show. I think so many of us, I actually still have a coffee mug from Redacted Tonight.
I do too.
And so I definitely do. Look, I'm a real Lee Camp fan. People don't believe me, but it's true. I'm not just saying it. I really am. But you're back with Unredacted Tonight. You're back on the set, back on the scene, a lot going on. Tell us about the show and tell us about, the next episode, what you're going to have coming up and where we can find it.
Thank you guys so much. And of course, I love all of your work. So thanks for being a lodestar to so many people. I recreated, it took me 3 years, but I recreated it. I recreated Redacted Tonight as an independent version. I'm calling it Unredacted Tonight. But luckily, it still has the same host, the same team of writers, the same producers, all being me. So it has the same voice. And I would love for people to check it out. We're on episode 7. We've been going 7 weeks now. Episode 7 premieres tonight. And tonight, the main topic will be the mountains, and I do mean mountains of evidence. And I'm sure you guys have talked about this, that Israel knew exactly what was going to happen on October 7th. Even the New York Times and others have done some small bits of coverage here and there about it. So that will be one of the main topics, but there's many other topics I'm covering as well, such as the FBI now acting as basically rent-a-cops for the nation's CEOs. And, it's comedy news, but it hits some important topics. So some people call it the Daily Show with sharper teeth, and I would love for people to check it out. The easiest place is leecamp.com/unredacted. That's the whole playlist of all the episodes.
Well, I would say sharper teeth and a lot more intelligence. No disrespect to the Daily Show, but that's my feeling. I really just hope everybody checks out episode 7 tonight, unredactedtonight.com. Do whatever you can to watch this show and tell people about it so we can promote it. Lee, it's always a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you both so much. It's a pleasure to see your faces.
Mm-hmm.